On September 11, 2001, as news of terrorist attacks reached government officials,
believe that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center in New York.
the White House quickly transformed into a crisis command
World
center.
Trade Center, we understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know anything
Amid
more.
the controlled chaos, the White House became a focal point of coordination between military leaders, intelligence agencies, and government officials. The events tested the resilience and leadership of everyone inside the White House. This was not only a day of unprecedented challenges, but also a moment that redefined the role of the presidency and the resolve of the American people in the face of adversity. On the morning of September 11, 2001, the White House was beginning what seemed like a normal, typical day. Early morning meetings were underway, staff focused on daily briefings, and the president, George W. Bush, was on a visit to a Florida elementary school. But by 8:46 a.m., everything changed.
Understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know anything more than
News broke out of the tragedy that shocked the world. Panic rushed through the minds of every American that witnessed or heard wind of the horrible news. When the first plane struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center, initial reactions at the White House ranged from confusion to disbelief. Staffers gathered around televisions in their offices, assuming it was a tragic accident. National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice, Chief of Staff Andrew Card, and Vice President Dick Cheney were alerted to the fact that this was no accident. Security quickly escalated and Secret Service agents began to move decisively, ushering Cheney and Rice into the underground Presidential Emergency Operations Center, the White House's secure bunker. The PEOC is a bunker underneath the east wing of the White House. It serves as a secure shelter and communication center for the President of the United States and others in case of an emergency. The White House staff were ordered to evacuate immediately. However, confusion and fear were present. Some employees stood frozen at their desks while others rushed to leave, gathering in nearby Lafayette Park where they tried to contact loved ones. The streets outside the White House were a mixture of people in shock and disbelief, all watching helplessly as the images of the burning towers filled TV screens. Before the 9/11 attacks, the White House had received warnings for months that an attack on American soil was coming from Al-Qaeda. A classified report titled "Bin Laden Determined to Strike in U.S." was declassified and approved for release on April 10, 2004, and it stated, "Clandestine foreign government and media reports indicate Bin Laden, since 1997, has wanted to conduct terrorist attacks in the U.S. After U.S. missile strikes on his base in Afghanistan in 1998, Bin Laden told followers he wanted to retaliate in Washington. An Egyptian Islamic Jihad operative told a blank service at the time that Bin Laden was planning to exploit the operative's access to the U.S. to mount a terrorist strike. While exact timing and targets were not specified, some reports indicated intentions were to hijack an aircraft. On Sunday, September 9, Ahmed Shah Massoud, who was the leader of the Afghans at the time, was fighting against Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, was assassinated in his headquarters by two Al-Qaeda operatives. The United States was made aware of this assassination. This was the last piece on the board that Bin Laden needed to remove before he could launch one of the most horrific terrorist attacks in the world. Everyone was on high alert inside the PEOC. Vice President Cheney took command due to President Bush being rushed out of the Florida elementary school with Air Force One en route to his whereabouts. A tense silence filled the air, punctuated only by urgent phone calls and briefings from intelligence agencies, the Pentagon, and NORAD, which stands for North American Aerospace Defense Command, a joint organization between the United States and Canada that defends North America from dangerous threats. Information was limited, and the chaotic nature of the attacks made it difficult to assess the full scope of the crisis. Shortly after the attack on the Pentagon at 9:37 a.m., military leaders informed Cheney that there were potentially more planes headed toward Washington. This meant that both the White House and the Capitol building could be direct targets. Cheney, Rice, and others were faced with a tough decision, but ultimately, keeping the White House and Capitol safe from danger was of the utmost priority. Vice President Cheney conferred with Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld and other military leaders and authorized orders to scramble fighter jets to intercept any aircraft that may pose a threat, with contingency plans for potentially shooting down hijacked planes if necessary. Back in the PEOC, as intelligence agencies tracked planes and briefed on unfolding events, Cheney faced some of the hardest decisions of his life. Advisors watched anxiously as information trickled in about United Airlines Flight 93, the final hijacked plane, which had diverted course toward Washington. Cheney and his team were preparing for a potential shoot down when, at 10:03 a.m., they received word that the plane had crashed in a Pennsylvania field. Unknown to those in the White House, passengers aboard Flight 93 had heroically attempted to retake the cockpit, sacrificing their lives to prevent further destruction. As the attacks continued, senior officials were concerned about managing communication with the public. Initially, only limited information was available, and public communication was carefully managed to avoid further panic. Later in the day, President Bush addressed the nation from Barksdale Air Force Base, expressing sorrow, resilience, and determination to bring justice to those responsible.
2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President.